Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
The new VP fired me at 6 a.m. on a video call for disruptive leadership and said I couldn't align with executive direction. By 11 a.m., I'd signed with their competitor as chief systems architect. 9 days later, the company fell apart and their major clients called me. Sup Reddit. Buckle up because this one's long and extremely satisfying. Name's Rick, 33 male. I spent 8 years building the fraud detection backbone of Vantage Payment Systems. 8 years of late nights, impossible deadlines, and stopping millions in fraudulent transactions, while executives collected bonuses for work they couldn't explain in a job interview. The company sold enterprise payment platforms to banks and financial institutions, the kind of systems that catch stolen credit cards, flag suspicious wire transfers, and keep entire payment networks from bleeding money to overseas scam operations. When our systems failed, banks lost real money. Customers got their accounts drained. Regulators started asking uncomfortable questions. Lawsuits happened. And I was the guy who made sure none of that happened. My official title was Director of Fraud Architecture, but titles in fintech mean about as much as horoscopes. The reality was messier. I was the fixer, the translator, the guy who turned panicked compliance officers and clueless product managers into functioning fraud prevention strategies, while leadership sat in boardrooms pretending they understood what a neural network actually did. The clients knew it too. When First Continental Bank was losing $2 million a month to card-not-present fraud, they didn't schedule a meeting with our sales team. They called me directly, freaking out about quarterly losses they couldn't explain to shareholders. I spent that weekend rebuilding their entire detection rule set from scratch, running simulations against 6 months of transaction data, and cutting their fraud rate by 63% before Monday morning. When Coastal Pacific Credit Union got hit by a coordinate account takeover scheme that threatened to drain 300 customer accounts, I was the one who traced the attack vector back to a compromised API key and patched the vulnerability at 2 a.m., while their CEO watched via video call and sweated. My girlfriend Jenna thought I worked too much. She was probably right. We'd been together 3 years, lived together for 2, and somewhere along the way she'd stopped asking about my day and started asking when I'd be home instead. I should have paid more attention to the drift. The way she'd sigh when I said I needed to take a call, the way she'd scroll through Instagram while I explained something that happened at work, the way her friends' lives always seemed to involve more vacations and nicer restaurants than ours. But I was too busy catching fraudsters to notice I was losing the one person who was supposed to have my back. Anyways, about the new VP. Warren showed up about 18 months before everything blew up. New VP of Operations, hired from some payment processor on the East Coast nobody had heard of, with an MBA from a school that probably had a better basketball team than academic reputation. The guy walked into Vantage like he was doing us all a favor just by being there. Expensive suits that fit too perfectly. First week, he called a company-wide meeting to introduce his operational excellence framework. I sat in the back, arms crossed, watching him click through 57 slides about synergistic alignment and cross-functional optimization and leveraging core competencies for stakeholder value creation. Not a single slide contained actual information about how fraud detection worked, how payments cleared, or what our systems actually did for clients. The thing about Warren was that he wasn't stupid. He could read a room, play politics like it was a contact sport, and make himself look competent to anyone who didn't understand the actual work. Board members loved him. He spoke their language, laughed at their jokes, and never made them feel dumb for not knowing what a chargeback was. But put a technical problem in front of him, and his eyes glazed over like you'd started reading the phone book in Mandarin. He also had this thing where he needed to be the smartest person in every room. He'd interrupt engineers mid-explanation to add context that added nothing. He'd take credit for ideas he'd overheard the day before. He'd shoot down good suggestions just so he could propose the same thing later in different words and claim credit for the innovation. Within 3 months, he'd reorganized 2 departments for no clear business reason, fired a senior analyst who'd been with the company for a decade because she asked too many questions in meetings that made him look uninformed, and started showing up to my team's stand-ups uninvited. Just appeared one Monday morning, leaning in the doorway, asking questions that made my engineers exchange looks like they were watching a slow-motion car accident. The only person at Vantage who seemed genuinely unbothered by Warren's presence was Eddie from IT. But Eddie was unbothered by everything except running out of energy drinks. He ran help desk like it was a combination tech support center and personal podcast, narrating his troubleshooting process to anyone within earshot while somehow actually fixing things faster than anyone else on the team. He'd helped me out of more late-night system crunches than I could count, usually while explaining his latest conspiracy about office politics, or his sincere belief that our CFO was running a side business selling essential oils to middle managers. "Rick, my guy," he'd said once, "you're like the only director in this entire building who doesn't treat me like I'm furniture. Warren asked me to fix his laptop last week and didn't make eye contact once." I'd laughed it off at the time, but Eddie meant it. The guy remembered everyone who was decent to him, filed it away along with all the other details he collected about people who had no idea they were being cataloged. The first real confrontation with Warren happened during an operations council meeting, 3 months into his time there. He'd proposed accelerating the Sentinel 3.0 rollout by 3 months to impress the board before their quarterly review. Sentinel was our next-generation fraud detection engine, the system I'd been architecting for 2 years. It processed payment transactions in real time, ran behavioral analysis on every cardholder, and could catch fraud patterns that traditional rule-based systems missed entirely. It was going to be the foundation of everything Vantage did for the next decade. The room was full of nodding heads. Everyone wanted to impress the board. Nobody wanted to be the person who told the shiny new VP that his idea was fundamentally stupid. I pulled up my project timeline and walked them through the dependency chain. 3 months of cut corners meant skipping the load testing we needed for Black Friday volume, the single biggest transaction day of the year, when systems either held or collapsed under pressure. It meant shipping with known false positive issues that would flag legitimate transactions and cost our banking clients millions in declined purchases and furious customers. It meant going live before we'd completed PCI DSS compliance certification, which could get us blacklisted from Visa and MasterCard entirely. We shipped Sentinel early, and we're not just risking bugs, I said, looking directly at Warren. We're risking regulatory action. We're risking losing our card network certifications. We're risking client relationships that took a decade to build. This is what happens when you compress timelines without understanding dependencies. Warren's face went red. "I appreciate the thorough analysis," he said, his voice tight and controlled. "But I think we need to be more solutions-oriented here. The board has expectations. The solution is not rushing a fraud engine to market before it's ready. That's not being negative. That's being competent." And that was the moment I became a problem. I could see it happen in real time, his expression shifting from annoyed to calculating, like someone filing away a threat for later. I'd challenged him publicly, with data, in front of people who mattered. The night before everything changed, I stayed late troubleshooting a critical deployment for First Continental. Their fraud scoring system had started flagging legitimate high-value wire transfers, and their wealth management clients were furious about having transactions held for manual review while they tried to move money between accounts. Rich people don't like being treated like suspects. I traced the issue to a misconfigured velocity rule, rebuilt the detection logic, tested it against 6 months of transaction data, and pushed the fix by midnight. Drove home exhausted, barely registered Jenna already asleep on her side of the bed, facing away from me, like always lately, set my alarm for 7, and passed out. I never made it to that alarm. At 5:47 a.m., my phone started buzzing on the nightstand. Video call request. Warren Hollister, HR copied in. I stumbled to the kitchen, splashed water on my face, and accepted the call at 5:52. Warren appeared on screen looking way too alert and put together. Nina from HR popped into a smaller window, looking like she'd rather be literally anywhere else. Warren didn't bother with pleasantries. Launched straight into the script he'd clearly rehearsed in front of a mirror, talking about leadership alignment concerns and communication patterns inconsistent with executive direction, and a need to transition the team in a new strategic direction that better serves organizational objectives. I cut him off. "Just say it, Warren." He blinked, thrown off his rhythm. "We're restructuring the fraud architecture role. Your position is being eliminated effective immediately, at 6 in the morning, with HR on the call, before anyone else in the company is even awake. That's a firing. You can use whatever words make you feel better about it." Nina jumped in with the paperwork. Severance terms, non-disparagement clause, equipment return instructions. Standard corporate execution stuff. My system access had already been revoked. They'd done it while I was sleeping, like changing the locks before the eviction notice arrived. 7 minutes. That's all it took to erase 8 years of work, relationships, and late nights. 7 minutes of Warren's smug face and Nina's uncomfortable silences in corporate language designed to make firing someone sound like a mutual business decision. Warren signed off with, "I wish you the best in your future endeavors." The first hour after that, was this weird limbo where your brain keeps trying to follow routines that don't exist anymore. They'd timed it perfectly. Before dawn on a Wednesday, when nobody else would be online to see it happen. By the time my team logged in for their morning coffee and stand-up meeting, I'd already be a ghost in the system. Calendar wiped, access revoked, name removed from the org chart like I'd never existed. Around 7:30, Jenna came out in her robe, scrolling through her phone with the zombie concentration of someone checking social media before their eyes were fully open. She froze when she saw me sitting at the kitchen table staring at nothing. "You're still here? Don't you have that thing with the bank today?" "Got fired." She blinked, processed. Her expression shifted to something I couldn't quite read. "What do you mean, fired? Like, laid off?" "Like fired. At 6 in the morning. By video call. They'd already locked my accounts before they even told me." I expected sympathy, maybe anger on my behalf, a hug, something that showed she cared about what I was going through. What I got was silence, followed by a question that told me everything I needed to know about where her head was at. "What about the mortgage? The car payment? You just signed us up for that vacation to Cabo in March." "I already told everyone at work we were going. This is humiliating. Not, 'Are you okay?' Not, 'That's insane. You've given that company 8 years. Straight to the money and how this affected her. I'll figure it out. 3-month severance. Non-compete is narrow. I'll land somewhere." She stared at me for a long moment, jaw tight. "You'll figure it out. Great. That's very reassuring, Rick. Super helpful." She shook her head and walked back to the bedroom without another word. I heard her shower run a few minutes later. Heard her getting ready for work like it was any other Wednesday. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but then I saw the first few words and stopped cold. "Yo, Rick. It's Eddie from IT. Using my personal number BCUR work stuff is toast LOL. Hey, random question. Did you know your account got killed at like 5:38 this morning? Auto ticket pinged me and I had to clear it from the queue. Thought it was a glitch at first, but then saw the offboarding packet come through. Everything okay? Kinda weird timing, right?" I stared at the message. 5:38 a.m. They'd disabled my access 17 minutes before the video call even started. Before they'd officially told me anything. Before I'd had any chance to respond to whatever concerns they claimed to have. "Offboarding packet?" I typed back. "Yeah, the HR thing. You know how they prep those ahead of time for terminations? It's a whole workflow in the system. Saw it when I was clearing the ticket. Time-stamped from yesterday afternoon, actually. 4:47 p.m. Figured you already knew all this, though, since they called you this morning. Just being thorough. Yesterday afternoon, they'd prepared my termination paperwork at 4:47 p.m. the day before, while I was still at the office troubleshooting First Continental system. While I was still employed, still working, still fixing problems for clients who depended on me. "Who submitted the access kill request?" I asked. "Let me check, hold on. Okay, looks like it came from Nina Park in HR, but the approval chain shows Warren H. signed off on it at like 4:52. Dude moves fast, LL. Also, I probably shouldn't be telling you any of this, but, the only director who's ever been nice to me, so, whatever. Loyalty counts for something, right? Warren had signed off on killing my access at 4:52 p.m. yesterday, 5 minutes after the offboarding packet was created. Appreciate the heads up, Eddie. Seriously. NP man! Hey, if you ever need a reference or whatever, let me know. Anyway, hope everything works out. This place is gonna be weird without you. Kinda sad, actually." I screenshot the conversation and saved it, because documentation matters. And because Eddie had just handed me proof that this wasn't a performance issue. This wasn't about leadership alignment. This was a planned hit, decided and approved while I was still doing my job. The practical fears started hitting around 8, coming in waves. Mortgage due in 2 weeks. Health insurance expiring in 30 days. But underneath the fear was something else now. Something that felt like clarity. Made myself shower and get dressed. Fresh coffee that was actually hot. My phone buzzed at 8:40. Theo Marchetti, VP of Operations at First Continental Bank. The client whose system I'd fixed 12 hours earlier. Tell me it's not true. It's true. Warren Hollister decided my leadership style was too disruptive this morning. Theo went quiet for a moment. "You know our platform agreement with Vantage is up for renewal in 4 months, right? If you land somewhere else before then, somewhere that can handle enterprise fraud detection at our scale, give me a call. I'm not making any promises, but I've worked with you for 5 years, and I've worked with Warren for about 5 minutes. I know which one of you actually knows what they're doing." After we hung up, I opened my personal email. 6 weeks ago, Cole Ashford, CEO of Prism Financial Technologies, had reached out with an offer. Chief Systems Architect, full authority over product direction, meaningful equity stake, compensation that had made me stare at the screen for a solid minute before closing it without responding. I'd turned it down because I believed Vantage still needed me, because I thought loyalty meant something, because I was dumb enough to think that doing good work would protect me from someone like Warren. At 9:20 a.m., I typed a reply. Situation changed. Interested in talking. Available today. His response came 20 minutes later. He'd heard what happened. Fintech community is smaller than people think. Denver office. 11 a.m. Position was mine if I wanted it. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. Jenna was on the phone in the bedroom, laughing at something. Completely in her own world. I didn't bother saying goodbye. Prism. Financial Technologies operated out of a building that looked nothing like Vantage's sterile corporate headquarters. Natural light flooding through floor-to-ceiling windows. Employees who made eye contact and said hello instead of rushing past like you were invisible. Cole met me in the lobby himself. Mid-50s, silver hair, sport coat with no tie. He walked me through the operation on the way to his office. Engineering floor where people actually talk to each other instead of hiding behind monitors. Client success team staffed by former fraud analysts who understood the product from the ground up. Support with response times measured in minutes. We've been watching Vantage for years, Cole said as we walked, watching them make the same mistakes over and over, promoting the wrong people, ignoring their technical talent, chasing short-term wins at the expense of relationships that took a decade to build. When I heard what happened this morning, I wasn't surprised. The contract was already printed when we sat down. Double my previous salary, meaningful equity stake, and actual authority to make decisions without running them through 7 layers of executives who didn't understand what they were approving. I read every page, old habit, everything checked out. At 11:20 a.m., I signed. 5.5 hours after Warren tried to end my career, I'd landed in a position that was bigger, better compensated, and would put me in direct competition with the company that just threw me away. Cole shook my hand. Welcome to Prism. We've got work to do. I spent the afternoon getting oriented. Around 1:30, I ducked into my new office and checked my phone for the first time in hours. Text from Eddie. Dude, update from the trenches. Overheard Warren on a call freaking out about something called Sentinel. He was literally yelling at someone about timelines, voice cracking and everything. Also, he asked IT to pull her access logs from the last 6 months, which is pretty weird, right? Like, what does he think are hiding? We don't even keep logs that long, lol. Then another. Oh, also apparently there's some big announcement coming. Everyone's acting weird and having whisper meetings. Wanted to give you heads up in case it's about you. This place is getting squirrely. I smiled. Eddie had no idea how much intel he was providing, just by paying attention and not having a filter. Then a forwarded email notification popped up from someone still at Vantage, sent through a personal account. Subject: Sentinel 3.0, delayed 6 months, internal announcement. I read it 3 times. Warren had officially pushed back Sentinel by half a year, citing resource optimization and quality assurance priorities. Translation: without me there to explain things, he had no idea how to ship the product he'd been rushing everyone to deliver. Sentinel wasn't just another feature update. It was the foundation of Vantage's entire enterprise roadmap for the next 3 years. Delaying it 6 months would trigger breach clauses in at least 4 major contracts, penalty payments that would eat through any profit margin, potentially client departures that would snowball through the entire business. Warren had just set his own house on fire. By 2:30 that afternoon, my phone was blowing up with messages from former colleagues. The Sentinel announcement had landed like a bomb in the client community, and shrapnel was flying everywhere. A senior account manager forwarded me an email chain where First Continental was demanding an emergency call with leadership. Their entire fraud prevention roadmap was built around Sentinel's capabilities. 6 months delay meant renegotiating their own compliance timelines, eating costs they hadn't budgeted, and explaining to their board why the platform they'd invested 7 figures in wasn't delivering what was promised. At 2:40, the first termination notice hit. Coastal Pacific Credit Union, mid-size client I'd personally onboarded 3 years ago, formally withdrew from their contract, citing breach of delivery commitments. They'd CC'd legal, their board of directors, and what looked like an external law firm specializing in vendor disputes. They weren't just leaving. They were building a lawsuit. A second termination came at 3:15, then a third at 3:52. Each referenced the delay, the lack of communication, and serious concerns about the vendor's ability to execute on stated commitments. Eddie texted again, "Bro, it's chaos here." Warren just had a screaming match with someone in the big conference room. Glass walls so everyone saw everything. He's blaming stuff on legacy architecture decisions, which I think means you. Also, HR is pulling together some kind of statement. They asked me for those access logs I mentioned. Told them I'd need a formal request with proper approvals and signature from legal. Bought myself like 2 weeks probably. Then, okay, wait, this is getting weird. When I was checking ticket timestamps for their log request, I found something interesting. Warren's executive assistant booked a meeting room at 5:30 a.m. this morning, before our firing call even started. There's also a catering order attached for coffee and Danish for 2 people. So they were literally sitting in a conference room prepping while you were still asleep. Had the whole thing planned out. Another text a few minutes later. Update. Just found out Warren tried to get her badge access retroactively changed to show a left the building at 8 p.m. last night instead of midnight. Like he was trying to prove you weren't working late. I told him that's not how badge systems work, and also tampering with security logs is probably illegal. He did not like hearing that. I screenshot everything. Eddie was accidentally building a complete timeline of premeditation, one random detail at a time. My phone rang at 4:08. Warren Hollister. The man who'd fired me 8 hours ago was now calling me directly. I let it ring to voicemail. Watched it light up again immediately. Let that one go too. Third time I picked up, just to hear the panic in his voice. Gone was the rehearsed smoothness from this morning. His voice was tight, rushed, cracking around the edges. Rick, listen, I know things ended badly, but we have a situation here. The Sentinel dependencies, there are integration points nobody documented properly. The team can't figure out how to move forward without your input on the architecture. Everything was documented, Warren. 200 pages of technical specs in the shared drive. You just never opened it. None of you did. You were too busy making slides about synergistic alignment. Clients are terminating. The board is calling emergency sessions. I need you to consult. Advise. Name your rate. We can work something out that benefits everyone. I sat in my new office, watching the afternoon sun light up the mountains through the window, and let him sweat through a long silence. I don't work for Vantage anymore. You made sure of that this morning. This isn't about, come on, Rick, be professional about this. Help us stabilize the situation, and we can discuss bringing you back. Better title, better pay, whatever you want. You want me to clean up the mess you made so you can take credit for the recovery. Hard pass. What would it take? Seriously, I'm asking. Name your price. A time machine. Since you don't have one, good luck, Warren. Hung up. That night I drove home, grabbed takeout from the Thai place on the corner that knew my order, and walked into my apartment to find Jenna packing a suitcase. She didn't even look up when I came in. Just kept folding clothes into neat stacks like she was preparing for a business trip. What's going on? I'm staying with Rebecca for a while. I need some space to figure things out. Space to figure out what exactly? She finally looked at me. Something cold in her expression I'd never seen before. You got fired, Rick, after 8 years, and you're just sitting there acting like it's no big deal. I signed with Prism this morning. Better position, better pay, better everything. I'm fine. She paused mid-fold. You signed somewhere else? Already? Without even talking to me about it first? Didn't realize I needed permission to not be unemployed? She shook her head, zipped the suitcase harder than necessary. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You make decisions like, I'm not even here. Like your career is the only thing that matters. She grabbed her bag and walked past me without another word. Door clicked shut. In 12 hours, I'd lost my job, my girlfriend, and any illusion that the life I'd built was as stable as I'd believed. I ate my Thai food alone. Went to bed early in a half-empty apartment that suddenly felt a lot bigger. The next 9 days played out like slow-motion demolition, and I had front-row seats with popcorn. Day 2. 2 more client terminations. Word spread through fintech circles that Vantage's fraud detection roadmap was a mess. I fielded calls from 3 former colleagues asking if Prism was hiring. Day 3. Jenna texted that she'd moved out. 3 years together, and I got the same energy as a property management notice. Eddie texted too. Update from the trenches. Warren held an all-hands and blamed everything on you, said you sabotaged documentation before leaving, which is hilarious because I can literally see the docs in the shared drive. People who know you aren't buying it, but the new hires look scared. Also, he made IT search your old emails for evidence of misconduct. We didn't find anything, obviously, because there wasn't anything, but he made us write a report saying we looked. Felt gross, man. Day 4. My mentee called, upset. Warren was telling everyone I'd sabotaged the project before leaving. He's saying you deleted files or something. People who don't know you are actually believing him. Let him talk. The documentation's all still there. Anyone who looks can see it. Truth comes out eventually. Eddie again. Okay. HR asked me to pull device imaging from your old laptop and check for unauthorized email forwarding rules to see if you sent company data to personal accounts. I told them we don't have that kind of monitoring set up, and also, that's not how any of this works. They seemed confused. Then they asked if I could check her browser history from 6 months ago. Had to explain that we wipe machines after offboarding, and also that's not a thing we track. Day 5, Theo called. First Continental's board had voted to accelerate their contract evaluation. They weren't waiting 4 months. They wanted out now. If Prism could present a comprehensive migration plan within 2 weeks, they were prepared to sign. This was the moment. Everything I'd built over 8 years was about to pay off in a way Warren couldn't have predicted. Scheduled the presentation for day 7. Cole cleared his entire calendar to attend personally. Eddie sent me a voice memo that afternoon. Apparently, he discovered that Warren had tried to schedule a damage control meeting with First Continental himself, but they declined twice, and then stopped responding to his emails entirely. The account manager handling the relationship had told Eddie she'd never seen a client ghost a VP that fast. Day 6, 18 hours straight. Migration timelines, architecture diagrams, risk assessments, cost projections, regulatory compliance frameworks. I mapped out every integration point, every potential failure mode, every question they might ask about transitioning their fraud detection from one platform to another without disrupting operations. 3 Prism colleagues stayed late with me. Nobody complained about the hours. Nobody asked about overtime. They could feel we were building something. Eddie. 3 engineers quit today, including Kim, that girl you mentored since her first week. She said she couldn't work for people who treat employees like Warren treated you. HR tried to do an exit interview and she just laughed at them. Also, Warren's assistant quit, said she couldn't be part of whatever this is becoming anymore. Her exact words according to the receptionist who heard everything. Things are falling apart here, Rick. Genuinely feel bad for the people still stuck. Another Eddie text that night. Forgot to mention, found out Warren had IT create a fake timeline document showing the Sentinel delays were planned months ago. Like he was trying to rewrite history. Day 7. First Continental presentation. 4 hours in a conference room with their entire leadership team. Every question they asked, I had an answer for. Their CTO asked about a specific integration challenge they'd struggled with at Vantage for years. I showed him how Prism had already solved it, with case studies from 2 other banking clients. Their compliance head wanted to know about PCI certification timelines. I introduced her to our security team via video call right there in the meeting. They signed a letter of intent before leaving the building. Day 8. 4 more Vantage clients reached out. The Sentinel delay had shattered confidence across their entire customer base. Day 9. Vantage's board called an emergency session that lasted 6 hours. Apparently, there was screaming involved. Multiple sources confirmed that Warren tried to blame the entire collapse on a coordinated attack by competitors and disgruntled former employees, which went over about as well as you'd expect when the board members could literally read the termination timeline Eddie had accidentally documented. When it ended, they announced Warren had stepped down to pursue other opportunities. Corporate speak for, "We fired him before he could do any more damage." Eddie's final text that night was gold. He's gone. Security walked him out at 4 p.m. with a cardboard box. He looked like someone told him his dog died, took his fancy laptop bag, and his stupid motivational poster. The security guard, Mike, said Warren, tried to argue that he should get to keep his parking spot for another month. Like that's what matters when you've just torched your career. Anyway, wanted you to know? Also, I might apply to Prism if you have openings. This place is absolutely cooked. The new interim CEO is walking around looking like she just realized she bought a house built on a sinkhole. That evening, I got a text from Jenna's friend Rebecca. Thought you should know. Jenna's been seeing someone. Guy from her office named Trent. Started before you got fired. She was planning to leave anyway. I laughed out loud. She'd been planning her exit while I was fixing fraud algorithms, and now she was with a guy literally named Trent. Didn't respond to Rebecca. Just went back to reviewing presentations. The first 3 months at Prism felt like finally breathing. Every decision I made was based on what would actually work, not what would make some insecure VP feel important. Every meeting had a purpose and an outcome. Every project moved forward instead of getting stuck in approval loops that existed only to let people cover their backsides. My team grew from 15 to 52. We hired carefully, engineers who thought independently, analysts who understood the business, account managers who actually listened to clients instead of reading from scripts. A lot of them came from Vantage. Word spreads fast about where the real work is happening, and people with options tend to pick competence over chaos. Eddie joined in month 2. I'd recommended him personally after his 5th unsolicited Intel update text about Vantage's continued implosion. The guy had accidentally become the most reliable source of corporate intelligence in the entire fintech industry. He became our head of IT support within 3 months. Turned out when you let Eddie actually implement his ideas, instead of dismissing him as just the IT guy, he was genuinely brilliant at building systems that worked. First Continental contract closed week 3, bigger than the original Vantage deal they'd walked away from. By month 2, 5 more enterprise clients, 4 of them former Vantage customers who specifically cited my involvement as the deciding factor. By month 3, fraud detection accuracy up 18% across the platform, false positives cut in half, numbers that actually meant something to the clients paying us to protect their money. Cole promoted me to the executive team after 90 days. The work was harder than Vantage, but in the right way. I started sleeping better. 7 hours instead of 4 or 5. Didn't realize how much the constant stress had been messing with me physically until it was gone. Around the 1-year mark, Theo called with industry gossip. Vantage had finally shipped a version of Sentinel, way behind schedule, stripped of half the features, already showing stability issues in production that were making clients nervous. Their stock was down 40% from when Warren got walked out. The board is starting to panic, Theo said. 3 members resigned last quarter. Word is they're looking to dump the fraud division entirely, cut their losses and focus on payments processing. Interesting. Thought you'd want to know. Trust is gone over there. Once it's gone, it's gone. Nobody's willing to bet their business on a company that showed it can't execute. As for Jenna, heard through the grapevine about a year in that things with Trent had blown up spectacularly. Turned out the guy had a fiancé nobody knew about in another city, and Jenna had been the side piece without realizing it. She'd moved back with her parents while figuring things out. 18 months after Warren fired me, I got an email from Vantage's board requesting a meeting. The board directly. They wanted to discuss selling off their fraud detection division. Their stock had tanked. 3 board members had resigned. The fraud division was now a liability they couldn't afford to maintain. Cole and I flew to their headquarters for the meeting. Same building. Everything smaller somehow. The boardroom felt half empty, even with a dozen people in it. They laid it out plainly. The division was underwater, they needed to cut losses, and they'd rather sell to someone who could actually run it than watch it fall apart completely. Asset purchase. Clean break. They'd keep the payments processing side and try to rebuild from there. Negotiations took 5 weeks. Prism acquired Vantage's fraud detection assets for about 30 cents on the dollar of what they'd been worth before Warren's run of incompetence. We kept the good engineers, fixed the product roadmap, and migrated their remaining clients onto our platform. I became head of combined fraud operations. 93 people. Largest fraud detection team in the industry. Eddie stopped by my new old office that day, now part of Prism's expanded footprint. This is genuinely insane, he said, spinning in my chair. A year and a half ago, I was clearing your termination ticket at 5:38 a.m., wondering why someone would fire the only competent person in the building. Now you literally own the whole division. That's movie stuff. That evening, I stayed late finishing integration docs. Building empty by 8. I was packing up when the front desk called. Mr. Caraway? Someone in the lobby asking for you? Says her name is Jenna. I hadn't thought about her in months. Curiosity won out. Send her up. She walked out of the elevator looking different. Thinner. Tired around the eyes. The polished confidence I remembered was gone. Hi. Jenna. I know I shouldn't be here. I heard about the acquisition. I leaned back in my chair. Waited. I made a mistake, she said quietly. Leaving the way I did. I panicked when you got fired and I handled it badly. You were already seeing someone else. The firing just gave you an excuse. She didn't deny it. That was stupid. I know that now. You walked out while I was still processing the worst day of my career. I stood, grabbed my jacket. I'm not the backup plan you come running to when the first choice doesn't work out. So that's it? That was it 18 months ago. We're just catching up. I hit the elevator button. Take care of yourself, Jenna. The doors opened. I stepped in. Watched them close. Drove home through empty streets, windows down. Thinking about the gap between that video call request and now. Got fired before sunrise by a man who thought I was disposable. Lost a girlfriend who was already gone. Watched a company bleed out for a year and a half because one executive couldn't handle being wrong, and somehow ended up exactly where I was supposed to be. Some doors close because they were never supposed to open. Some people leave because they were never really there. And sometimes the best thing that can happen is getting fired at 6 in the morning by someone who has no idea what they just lost. The view from here was pretty good. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.